So you might have noticed, like me, that vinyl's had a bit of a resurgence over the last 10 years. You know, there's a texture to listening to music on vinyl that isn't present in more modern music formats. And just about any type of music can benefit from the vinyl treatment. I personally like classical music and classic rock, but yeah, just about any type of music, you know, hip hop, popular music, even jazz, can sound great on vinyl. But it's not just playing it through a record player which is the key. The key is also getting the right amplifier and speakers to make vinyl really work for you. And I believe the best way of doing this is to actually go back to the 1970s. The 1970s in a lot of ways was the peak of hi-fi technology. Not just because of the features, because you know obviously modern systems have many more features, but you know, they really put a lot of engineering into the look and feel of hi-fi equipment. You know, things are just boring and black these days, but back in the 70s, you know, they really put a lot of effort into when you use the equipment, how it felt, how the buttons had a positive clunk to them, and the switches, you know, really felt like quality, because a lot of systems were quality. You know, a lot of people paid the money for high-end hi-fi systems that are still great today. Not only that, but the features you get on record players from the 70s and 80s are far better than the record players you get today. You know, today you can still buy record players, but even a fairly expensive $1,000 or $1,500 record player will not have the features of a 70s record player. Personally, I like the Marantz. I like the warmth of the sound from the Marantz, and I always wanted one. But the problem with some of these more fashionable 1970s hi-fi systems is they're getting kind of expensive. Everybody wants one. Everyone's collecting them because they look so great, they sound so great, and they're so nice to use. They have, you know, warmth and texture and tone that modern systems just don't have. So yeah, they're becoming difficult to find at a reasonable price. So the trick is to find one that doesn't actually work and fix it. And it's a lot easier than you think. You know, 1970s electronics were pretty basic. You know, they can be complex inside, but what I mean by basic is it's all wires to big soldering joints. You know, it's not that hard to fix. My unit, when I found it for $30 at a Goodwill, the lights didn't work, there was a crackle on the volume, and there's a few other bits and pieces that weren't working. I found a tutorial on YouTube on how to get all these things fixed. I purchased the parts, which were $12, and then I spent, you know, half a day soldering and changing out the pot, the capacitors, a couple of resistors and bits and pieces, and now it works 100%, and it's a beautiful looking device. And the same with my record player. The record player is a little more expensive. I paid $100 for the record player, but once again, it wasn't working. A reconditioned, fully working Marantz 6300 like I've got can go for well over $1,000 these days. But mine at $100, and then I spent another $40, $50 on parts, a couple of hours of labor getting the new bands in, and it works perfectly and looks beautiful. You know, it's not just functional, it's, you know, it's a centerpiece of my little music room here. As for the speakers, I tend to recommend, you know, I'm no music expert, so I'm not going to recommend particular brands or anything, but you know, you need to buy what sounds good for you, and you need to buy what's within your budget. For speakers, you know, I would recommend getting a modern set of speakers. Speakers from the 70s and 80s were never that good to start with, and they're sure to be worn out by now, whereas modern speakers have a real clarity to them, and you don't have to spend a lot of money. You know, a $100 set of speakers can sound pretty good, or in my case I spent $300 on my speakers and they sound amazing. And speakers, just like anything else in this world, have sort of diminishing returns, I believe. You know, if you're a real audiophile, I'm sure you'd spend a lot more money and you'd know the difference. But for me, you know, the difference between the sound of a $300 set of speakers and a $1,000 set of speakers is so minute that it's not worth me spending the money. And so I just bought speakers that I like the sound of, that sort of fit in with the look of the rest of my hi-fi system. And now I've got a system that, you know, I love to use. I love to get, you know, records. Records are just a big pain in the ass. They really are. You know, you can only play one side. You got to find the little track and put the needle down. but it's all part of the fun. It's all part of the fun, and everyone that comes over here, I drag them in here and make them play a record, and they love it, and they say it sounds fantastic, and it's just neat to go back to the days where records were popular, and you can see why they continue to be so popular because of the great, warmth and texture and tone that they bring out, particularly when mixed in with, these classic amplifiers. So that's my thoughts on building a classic vinyl hi-fi system. Even if you're on a budget, you can find these things reasonably cheaply, and even if you're not that technically minded, most of the components are easy to fix. Just follow the instructions and you'll be surprised how much satisfaction you get out of fixing these things, out of just touching the dials, out of playing with the records, and just listening to the beautiful music that they create. Well worth it if you love music.